happy Black History Month. Did you know that the Go Brave founding scripture is out of Joshua 1:6-9? Well, if you didn't know, now you know. It's the foundation to why we talk about what it means to go brave and cultivate courage. And I want to tell you more about that as we journey through the first book of Joshua for this February series of Cultivating Courage. Well, welcome back to our Cultivating Courage conversation. We started this back in December for our 25 days of soul work, unwrapping courage, a gift for your soul this season. And we have continued to meet with you now weekly every Tuesday at 6 p.m. And so I'm glad that you're here. And if you're new to me, my name is Jaleesa Dallas, and I help individuals and organizations cultivate courage and how they live, love, and lead. And that comes by way of helping them break barriers to their success, bolster their belief for greater confidence, and build courageous behaviors to optimize their life. That way they create belonging internally and externally in community. So I am glad that you are here. And if you could do me a favor, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share this with someone you know. I would truly, truly appreciate it. So today's conversation is part one of a 4-part series we're doing on the book of Joshua, specifically chapter 1. Yes, we're going to take 4 episodes to talk about chapter 1 because, again, it's the founding scripture or the founding chapter of what it means to go brave and this whole conversation on cultivating courage. But what I want to start off with is reading the various translations that can set the tone for our study today. And so I love 3 particular translations: the Message version, the Passion Translation, as well as the New Living Translation. So I do want to read from each one. Again, we're not going to cover the whole chapter on this particular video, but we're going to go through verses 1-5 of Joshua 1. So if you want to follow along in your own version, by all means do so. I'm going to read them on my computer, so that way you can have some context and content to what we'll be exploring today, because we're going to talk about preparation for the journey. So we're going to start this off with reading from the Passion Translation. Again, I'm going to read from my computer, and so follow along with me as you can. So Joshua's Great Commission. And after Moses, Yahweh's servant, died, Yahweh spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' faithful assistant, and said, "My servant Moses is dead. Now get up, prepare to cross the Jordan River, you and all the people. Lead them into the land that I am giving to the Israelites. Every part of the land where you march, I will give you, as I promised Moses. Your borders will extend from the southern desert to the northern mountains of the Lebanon, and from the great river Euphrates in the east to the Mediterranean in the west, including all the land of the Hittites. Joshua, no one will be able to defeat you for the rest of your life. I will be with you as I was with Moses, and I will never fail nor abandon you." And that's the Passion Translation. But what I do want to emphasize, instead of reading all of the translations, I want to read that last verse 5 from each of the translations. And so I just read the Passion Translation. So if you follow along and read verse 5, the New Living Translation says, "No one will be able to stand against you as long as you live, for I will be with you as I was with Moses. I will not fail you or abandon you." And then the Message version that I mentioned is another one of my favorites. Verse 5, "All your life, no one will be able to hold out against you. In the same way I was with Moses, I'll be with you. I won't give up on you. I won't leave you." I have some notes that I'm going to be following to address the topic of preparation for the journey. Because as we've read, Joshua has been given the responsibility to take the people of Israel into the promised land. And so with that, he has to let him know that because of his servant Moses passing, that Joshua is the next in line to make sure that this happens, to make sure that the promise that God gave to the Israelites is fulfilled. And so now he's taking on this responsibility and must move forward with it. And God reminds him that I'm going to be with you. Just like I was with Moses, I'm going to be with you. And I know that from what we've read, likely in Exodus and Moses's connection to God and relationship with God, it was a powerful one. And it was one that was set apart, which is why God says, my servant, the servant of the Lord Moses. And those particular words are only used for a few other people in the Bible, to include Abraham and David. And so to have that title, servant of the Lord, for which Joshua possessed and so did Moses, it's a great responsibility that requires leadership and obedience. And so before I get ahead of myself, I want to share 3 points into preparing for the journey. Because when we're talking about cultivating courage and being strong and courageous, as is what it means to go brave, we have to prepare ourselves for the journey, meaning we're seeking God and we're seeking his understanding and reading his word to make sure we have everything that we need to be successful. So I want to talk about 3 areas of preparing for the journey, and that's the person, the promise, and the pursuit. So the person, Joshua, was the assistant of Moses, the servant of the Lord. And Joshua was a soldier and a leader. And so he was told in that instance to get going, to now get up and go into the promised land. There was an urgency as God was communicating that for Joshua to do. Now, if we recall, I believe in Exodus, we learned about Joshua and what he did with himself as one of the 12 soldiers that went into Canaan to scout out the land. And so he and Caleb actually came back with a good report and found favor with Moses as a result, because they were the only one that had a positive perspective about their desire to go into the land God had promised for the Israelites. I also wanted to mention that the person of Joshua, actually, his name means salvation. And if we think about the correlation to the Old Testament and what it meant to come out of Exodus into the promised land, that's essentially exactly what Jesus did in allowing us to be reconciled and connected back to the Father, entering to the promises and to the rest that God has for us. And so in the same way, in the Old Testament, Joshua did that for the people of Israel. And so you can see the Old Testament salvation and that transition from the old into the new. And then finally, us coming into the New Testament and the experience that we have with Christ, him reconciling us back to the Father and us being able to experience the gift of salvation through a relationship with him. And so that's the person for which we are talking about in the book of Joshua. So as you think about cultivating courage and what it means to go brave, think about your personhood and how you're showing up in this space. Second to that is the promise. This was a promise that would be fulfilled by faith. And same difference, as I mentioned with Jesus, our relationship with him and the grace that we find by being in a relationship and having grace by faith helps us to experience the fulfillment of the promises that God has for us. One of those is rest. Now, the promise, unfortunately, as we saw in the book of Exodus, and before we get to the book of Joshua, is that because the Israelites were in disbelief and rebellion or disobedience, they were delayed in their promise of getting into the land which God had dedicated for them to have. And so we have to remember that the promise is always available to us. But if we are out of alignment, meaning we're in rebellion and or in disbelief or disobedience, we can postpone us experiencing the promises that God has for us in our lives. So as we consider the pursuit, it is revealing to us the necessity of the effort that is required to trust God, trust what he's called us to do. And in Joshua's case, he had to go from assistant to leader. And so he had to trust God with this position and realize that that strength and that courage was not going to be coming from himself, but it was going to be coming from God. And God reassured him that he would be successful by saying that he would never leave him, that he would be with him as he was with Moses. So I hope that this Bible study has helped you to see the connection between what it means to go brave and what it means to prepare for your journey ahead, what it is that God has promised you, and the pursuit of fulfilling that promise, and who you have to be as a person in order to get you from where you are to where you need to be. And so again, if you could do me a favor, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share this with someone you know. I would truly, truly appreciate it. If you found this information helpful or this study something that you want to dive deeper in, I encourage you to do so. One of my favorite commentaries is called Enduring Word, where I got a good amount of my nuggets from and sharing this content with you. So again, thank you for joining me. Until next time, let your soul work be your best work to a better you. Have a great one.